that our intention is to emerge in abundance through clarity, commitment, and action. I looked up the definition of abundance, and there's a very technical definition for it. It means a whole lot of something. That's basically what abundance means if I translate it. A very large quantity of something or more than is needed. And what that means is if you have, and that could be money, we're talking a little bit about financial planning, it could be prosperity, wealth, money, but it could also be love. It could also be, abundance of love. It could also be an abundance of learning, whatever it is. Abundance creates not only a good life for you, but it also helps you to give back to the world without trying to sound trite, but it does help create good. Giving is also part of the abundance mindset. And that's kind of where this all starts, with an abundance mindset. So we go from an abundance mindset to clarity about what you really want. And what we do in our profession as fiscal therapists, some of you have heard that word that I've used. I wrote a book called The Fiscal Therapy Solution 1.0. As fiscal therapists, we help people, many of you have goals and many of you are very clear in your goals, but what we really do is help crystallize and make it clearer. Or maybe you have some, but you don't have others. And in our conversations, what we try to do is get as clear as possible about what it is you want, and then ask you to commit to those things. Because commitment is the next level. And then once you have commitment, you can move into action. And action is where everything happens. That's where all the action is. Obviously, it's using that word twice, but that's where it happens, is with the action. So the series of exercises we're going to do today is going to get us from some clarity to, it's not going to be everything because we only have 90 minutes together, and each exercise is about 5 minutes. But it's going to provide you with more clarity. It's going to provide you with a way, commitment, because we're going to have you have the opportunity to put deadlines on some things, and it's going to get you into action. So I'm very excited about it because I saw what can happen and the change, the transformation that can happen in just a short time. And I hope you're excited as well. So let's talk about where we are today. It's very clear that over the last few months, time and circumstances have created shifts in perceptions and priorities. First, of course, we have the ascendance of COVID-19, and then the ensuing events which are creating, civil unrest and unrest really throughout the world. And then let's not forget, since we're talking some financial, let's not forget about the underlying economic issues. I haven't mentioned, but I will, oil prices plummeting. Another issue that we don't really think about, I just had a big birthday, which puts me square in the middle, and I know there are other people on the call the same age, square in the middle of the baby boomers. And a guy named Harry Dent, who's not been right on all of his predictions, he used to talk about the great boom ahead. And a lot of what he felt drove the market in the mid to late 2000s was the baby boomers saving for retirement. And he also predicted, and there is some truth at least to this, that as people are pulling out of the market, that's going to affect the markets as well. And we are right in that period right now, and we have not yet seen the effects of that, but that's going to be an underlying issue in regard to the markets to think about that's still there. So whatever your beliefs or your political leanings may be, it's clear that this shift is occurring, and it affects how we live and work, how we connect and how we communicate with others, and perhaps in how we create and preserve prosperity and wealth. Over the last few months, I've been talking to a lot of people, more just talking than anything, because people are confused, people are trying to figure out what's going on. And it occurred to me that over this last 3 months, that what people want today is different than they wanted the end of last year, which now is just 6 months ago. At that time it was really just 3 months ago. So I would say that over 80% of the people I've spoke to have different goals and dreams or thoughts about the future than what they did before. And when I reference them back to December 31st, 2019, that suddenly, I don't know about you, but for me, that seemed like ages ago. It seems like such a long time ago in terms of their feelings and emotions about it, around their life then and their future now, as opposed to looking at it 6 months ago. So there's a shift that's occurred, and we're going to talk a little bit about that shift. So where are we? I'm going to call all of you that are on the line entrepreneurs. Many of you own your own businesses, but in some form or another, all of you are entrepreneurs. Even if you're working at a job, I know many of you, some of you have jobs, but you're driving forces in those companies. So you're creating value on a day-to-day basis, and you have, an entrepreneurial spirit, and that's going to affect some of our conversations as we go along too. So I'm going to refer to us all as entrepreneurs, people that are driving forces in businesses, and many of us are professionals as well. So we have a choice as a group. We can ride this roller coaster that we're on and white knuckle it, hold on for dear life and see what happens. And I've had many conversations where that's what people are doing. Or the other choice is we can choose to recreate ourselves in terms of how we can better provide value and service. And if appropriate, rethink what it is we want and how we get to what we want. When I talk about creating value and service, I don't just mean to our customers if we're in business. I also mean to our loved ones, to our family members, to the community. Creating value is what creates more abundance. And from that is often where a lot of clarity comes from. It's not always from just our business experiences. So another way to describe this choice that I just talked about is to say, let's draw up a clean slate that looks like something like this. Let me recreate what I want and develop a plan as to how I can produce that. And think about that for a second, but that's the ultimate reason, I think, why we're here today. So I want to talk a second about planning. And financial planning is as part of planning, but I'm just talking about planning in general. And it's needed more today than ever because, number one, the shifts occurring that we just spoke about. Give you an example. How many businesses 3 months from now are going to look different than they did at the beginning of the year? I hate to pick on this as an example, but let's look at restaurants. How many restaurants will still survive in their current form by the time we get to this fall or this winter? That's a very sad situation, but many of them may be out of business. Many of them are going to be transformed. I've seen a lot of interviews with restaurant owners from around the country. Many of them are thinking about what the future looks like with distanced seating, with more outdoor eating in season, different types of food, because if takeout is going to be a good part of your business, certain food doesn't take out well. Certain food doesn't carry over by the time you get it home. So they're rethinking what their menus look like. That's just a very small example of one business, but businesses all over. I know we've got some attorneys on here today. We've got some real estate people. Been having a lot of conversations about how their businesses are shifting. Think about, I had the opportunity to be on the radio and podcasts for a couple weeks straight as a commercial real estate expert. I'm not, but I studied up on it and I became expert enough to talk intelligently about a lot of the shifts that people are looking at. What's going to happen to a lot of our center city office buildings when law firms have decided that lawyers like working at home and they may not need as much space as they did in the past. I know that for a fact because I'm talking to managing partners of law firms, and my next door neighbor works at one of the big law firms in Philadelphia. So I know that these things are under consideration. What happens to that extra space? Do they become colleges and universities? Do they become recreational areas in Center City? What I know is things are transforming. Also related to that, new paradigms. The paradigms are shifting. What does the workplace of the future look like? Part of it looks like what many of us are doing right now, sitting at our home computers and working from there, at least to a certain extent. We're probably going to spend a lot less time in offices. How about greetings and affection? I love to think about this one. When will we be able to shake hands again with friends and customers and business associates? How about hugging? Showing affection. I for one am a hugger. I like to hug, and I get to hug my wife a lot these days. But that's about it. You can't really hug anyone else. How about dating? If you're in the dating world, what does a first date look like these days? What does a third date look like when touch is so limited? How are introductory business meetings going to be conducted in the future? How about business travel? Is that going to come back to where it was before? Most of what I read says not fully, and not for a while. So what does all that look like? Lastly, let's talk about the meaning and value of money in people's lives. Give examples. I was talking before about the 6-month shift, and there was a client that really struck me with this conversation we had probably about a month ago. And he's done very well. He sold a business, and he's got more than enough money that he'll ever need. And when I asked him that question about what shifted over the last 6 months in your thinking, he said, I've been giving a lot of thought to that. And he said, a lot of the excess that I have, he mentioned 5 cars. I don't know if he used that as an example or if he really has 5 cars. Never delved into that with him. But he said, don't need them. I don't really need them anymore. Just my vision of that has changed. I've also decided that my kids don't need all my wealth. I want them to be productive. So I'm going to pull back on that in my estate planning. And at the same time, I'm getting a lot more philanthropic. So those two things kind of meld together. I'm also having a lot of people having conversations saying, my financial goals, they're very important, but right now I value my health, my family's health, everyone around me is healthy. And that ultimately is more important than money. And here I'm saying this as a financial planner, I'm supposed to help people with money, but what you value and what's important in your life is important. And obviously finances is part of that. So I just wanted to reference some of those stories to give you an idea of how people are shifting and what's going on with that.